This is Jay Martin.
What are you hearing from your institutional buyers, the institutional meetings you're taking? You spend a lot of time in New York.
Most of the comments that we get are that this looks like, a billion-ounce district, which is huge. There's 15 billion-ounce districts in the world. I think we're the 16th. And we have a tier 1 asset. That means it's an asset that can produce really in any metal environment, metal price environment. So, we have the goods, and this is all at a time where silver is becoming more and more important. If we want to achieve, these 2030 and 2050 goals for decarbonization and electrification, silver is imperative for that.
Welcome to the Jay Martin Show. If you're new to the channel, my name is Jay. I'm an investor. I'm just looking for the smartest home for my cash. If that sounds like you, then I think you're going to like what we do here. My guest today is Michael Konnert, the president and CEO of Vizsla Silver. Now, Michael's been very busy since the last time I had him on, including making his second silver discovery of the year. This story is quickly shaping up to be the largest undeveloped silver project in the world. I'm a happy shareholder and keen to share why I like this story. Here's Michael Konnert. Michael.
Jay.
Good to see you, man.
You too. Thank you for having me.
Of course. Grab a seat. Excited to talk to you. So I've had you on the show before. I wanted to bring you back for an update as well. Since we last spoke, you've been busy. You've been busy on the road. I mean, you're always busy, but you've been presenting at a few events, hosted a site tour down in Mexico. Let's start here. Tell me about sentiment right now towards a company like Vizsla Silver. What are you seeing? How do you feel?
Well, I feel excited. I feel excited because, what we have is so special, and despite the market, project-wise, company-wise, we're making such great progress. So, that's what really excites me. The market comes and goes, that always happens. But the fundamental value that we have here is huge. So first of all, I'm excited. Second of all, sentiment is terrible.
Okay, yeah.
That's why you're seeing insiders buy the stock now. We think we're completely undervalued. But over the last year here, I've been on the road traveling Europe, New York. I spent a long time in New York talking to our institutional investors, and it's clear that the world isn't thinking metals, precious metals, silver right now. It's thinking about the big distractions like Tesla, Bitcoin to some extent, and things like this. So, what that tells me is that we're early, and this is a huge opportunity right now. Okay,
so maybe let's frame this conversation for somebody if this is their first time putting eyes on Vizsla Silver. Let's give them a headline. Michael, why should they have a look at your company right now?
Well, Vizsla Silver is finding silver right now at a rate that surpasses really any other company. And we have a tier 1 asset. That means it's an asset that can produce really in any metal environment, metal price environment. So, we have the goods. And this is all at a time where silver is becoming more and more important. And silver is becoming more important because it's fundamental in solar panels, electrification, electric vehicles. And simply put, there isn't enough silver in the world to meet that demand. We're every year running a deficit in the silver and supply and demand balance. And this year it's the biggest deficit yet. So silver price has moved a little bit to reflect this, but I expect that the silver price will explode in the future. Following gold, and I think it's going to be an incredible time not only to be an investor in this space, but to be a shareholder of Vizsla Silver.
So that conversation, because that supply and demand glut is pretty commonplace, right? We have that regularly. I mean, on stages at my conference, which I guess if you're at my conference, you are looking for opportunities in precious metals, but I'm seeing it in general media as well. And so, what are you hearing from your institutional buyers, the institutional meetings you're taking? You spend a lot of time in New York. So these individuals are looking for exposure, getting ready to get positioned in silver, or are they still waiting for some sort of trigger point or event to occur?
Well, I think there's a few different categories there. There's groups of people that are familiar with the space and they're early, or maybe it's their job to invest in precious metal stocks. And if that's the case, they love the project, they love our team, they love what we're doing with this project. I mean, most of the comments that we get are that this looks like, a billion-ounce district, which is huge. There's 15 billion-ounce districts in the world. I think we're the 16th.
Okay. Good context.
Yeah, that's important. And we're very high grade, which is important to the resource investor as well. We're about 3 times, 4 times the average grade of an underground mine in Mexico. Grade typically means margin. So all these important markers about our project, including where it sits, off of infrastructure, off the highway, about an hour outside of Mazatlan in Mexico. All these are important aspects and characteristics of our project. So when we talk to investors about this, they love this. They own Vizsla, they want to own more. But the problem is, for a lot of investors that are in the space, is that there are fund outflows, or at least the funds haven't been seeing any inflows. And that, to me, again, just tells me that we're early, that these precious metals or metals-focused funds aren't, seeing that level of investment that we've seen in the past. So, I think what that also tells me is that when we do have a market for these metals, the money typically goes to the top names first. I think a lot of money will flow into Vizsla when that's the case. And when I look at the market, it's so tight that any kind of excess buying typically moves the stock significantly. I think when the tables turn here, the tide changes. The move in Vizsla will be explosive.
Could be, and will likely happen quite fast, because I think the New York listing is very important. I mean, when people are buying stock, nobody's buying more than Americans. How important is that property for Vizsla relative to your peers in the precious metals equity space?
How important is it that we have the New York listing?
Yes.
I think it is very important for us. And, my mentality around this, has always been the same. You want to remove as many barriers for people to invest in your company as possible. And, for us, when we had the opportunity, because of our share price and liquidity and things like that, to list on the New York Stock Exchange, I jumped at that opportunity because, the U.S. market is it dwarfs Canada. It's the most important stock buying market, in the world. And, I do know, I've looked historically, you think about silver companies in the past, and, in each of the 4 last gold bull markets, silver lagged and then outperformed gold as a metal. Yeah. And it moved up about 4 times the price after that, at 4x on average in those bull runs. So that would be like us going to about $100 now an ounce. In that time that the metal 4x'd, the silver companies went up 10, 20, 30, 40 times. And it's explosive. I said that before, but it does happen like that, and it happens very quickly. So knowing that I want to, that the company wants to remove, as many hurdles for buyers as possible, that New York listing was very important. And, we're listed in Europe as well on the German exchange. So, really people all around the world can buy the stock.
So you just made your second discovery of the year with actually what was a condemnation drilling program. So can you walk my audience through what you're looking at now in terms of what's under the ground?
Well, it's really incredible. The project, it sits about an hour outside of the city of Mazatlan. You can take one of 2 highways to get to the project. When you get to, the resource, which sits underground, it outcrops in some places, but it goes underneath the highway. You look up and you see high tension power lines. You couldn't ask for a better located mineralized body like we have there. And so far we have about 220 million ounces, about 50% indicated, 50% inferred.
Yes.
That's a stale number. That number is going to grow. As you mentioned there, we've made new discoveries this year. In early 2024, we expect to put out our updated resource.
Yes.
And those discoveries will feed into that.
Okay.
What's really special about Panuco is we have these huge veins. Really what it is if you think of keys of a piano, it's like that, going from west to east. You have all these veins running through, this district. We've got about 100 kilometers of cumulative vein strike that run through this district. That we consolidated this project for the first time in modern history about 4 years ago. And since then, we've been really aggressively exploring, making new discoveries. Michael Gray from Agentis, who's a world-renowned analyst, refers to us as the largest undeveloped high-grade silver resource in the world.
That's right.
Which is incredible to do that in 4 years of 3 years of drilling, 4 years of having the project. So these discoveries are going to continue to add to that existing resource, and it'll continue to grow. But that condemnation hole was really it made me laugh a little bit, because we were literally, the objective of that hole was not to find silver. And we
so that you could build some infrastructure.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we hit a high-grade silver vein. So we can't help but find it there. I mean, it sounds a little cheeky to say that, but it has a direct analog to many of these big silver districts in Mexico. And I think in due time that will show that this is, you know, one of these mega districts.
Okay, so the new resource estimate sometime in the new year, early 2024, more than likely. Can you comment on, you know, what you expect to be telling the public at that time, and then walk me through the strategy after that, Michael? What are you going to be doing at Vizsla? What's the you know, longer term plan?
Well, you know, our vision has always been to become one of the world's largest single asset silver primary producers with our asset here. As far as growth to that resource, you know, previously we've guided about 50+ million ounces being added in both categories to this resource. I think that's achievable. Okay. Beyond that, you know, all these resources really are kind of just a snapshot of time, right? It's going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to grow these veins that we have
as you continue drilling. And
exactly. Yeah. And each of those veins that we have, you know, Copala, Napoleon, Tajitos, Cristiano, now Luisa, and Molino, are all open along strike. And they all sit in a tiny little circle. I mean, relatively tiny in the sense that our map is big, but in the map, it's a small portion of the map, about 4 kilometer radius that all of those resources sit in. You know, the rest of the district has yet to be explored. I think there's a huge amount of upside there. So 2024 is about kind of putting that line in the sand with this resource, talking about, okay, this is how much we have. And then we ask ourselves, well, how much of this can make it into a mine plan to meet that goal of going into production? Yeah. And that will be another document that we'll publish later in the year called the PEA, Preliminary Economic Assessment. And that will really give investors and shareholders and the public an insight into how do those ounces come out of the ground and create value for shareholders? How do we make money at this? Because at the end of the day, it's all about making money and creating value for shareholders.
And do you have a number in mind, what you need that estimate, what you need that resource to be to move forward with the mine plan?
We did have a number. Historically, it was 60 million ounces was our kind of our first goal. So we've surpassed that. Yeah. You know, you could look at you know, Silvercrest is a topical name. That would have been, you know, I believe about 120 million ounces. Yeah. You know, Meg Silver has attributable to them, I believe, about 250, 260 million ounces. You know, I suspect that we'll be, you know, on the other side of those companies, larger than those companies. As far as the mine plan, it's all about maximizing the return on investment here. So we need to look at things like CapEx. Need to look at things like our CapEx to NPV ratio. That's important. But what we want to see is that this is a mine that has the high grade characteristics, the margin, you know, to bring forward a lot of value for shareholders, pay off infrastructure and CapEx very quickly, and then just generate cash flow for many years.
And has the longevity.
That's right.
Right, which you believe it does based on what you've seen thus far.
That's right. And you know, probably the best way to describe that potential longevity is to talk about San Dimas. And San Dimas is about 80 kilometers away. It's almost identical geography, mineralization, date of rocks, et cetera. You know, for many years, everyone kind of compared Panuco and San Dimas to each other. But the problem was, of course, that there was all these various landholders that were never consolidated in our district till we showed up there, and I spent about a year in country doing that. But to go back to San Dimas has 100 years of continuous commercial production. From the early 1900s, it's been in continuous annual production at a large scale. Not a lot of projects in the world like that. No. Previous to that, it had been mined for a couple hundred years, going back to the Spanish. So, and then today, you know, it's First Majestic's cornerstone. It was the asset that built Goldcorp, and then Randy Smallwood and crew and Ian Telfer took the stream from San Dimas and built Wheaton Precious Metals, which is one of the world's largest mining companies now by revenue. So these are the types of assets that have the potential to create a huge amount of value in a lot of different ways, not only just mining, of course, but, you know, instruments like streams and royalties and things like that. So, you know, we believe that, you know, we have that. We have something very similar. You know, there's been a significant amount of historic production on a small scale over the 400-year history of the project. So we know that there's been small scale production over the years. We know that the resource that we have, we think it's well on its way to becoming one of these billion-ounce districts like San Dimas.
Can you walk me through your shareholder base a little bit, Michael? Any names you'd like to highlight that you would want my audience to be aware of?
Well, we're very fortunate to have the support of our shareholders, and Sprott organization is up there, Eric Sprott, and then the various Sprott asset management groups, very supportive shareholders. Franklin Templeton is our largest shareholder, and we're appreciative of that, and grateful to that company there, very supportive. Fidelity as well, and Extract Capital, Luxor Capital, a number of very strong names. We have a long list, but of course the probably most pertinent and important for investors is that I was the founder of the company, bought the very first share of the company, took it through an IPO in 2018, and my business partner and our chairman, Craig Perry, is one of the largest shareholders as well, owning I believe 8 million plus shares. It's
very important.
Yeah, we're allergic to dilution. Unfortunately, in this business, often, in order to progress an asset like this, a company must take some level of dilution, but we try to minimize it as much as possible. But we are aligned with shareholders. I think that's something that sets us apart.
100%. Oh yeah. I want to make sure that you get paid when I get paid. Yeah. Right, as a shareholder of the company. Hypercritical. Now, in terms of news flow, so we're looking forward to the resource estimate in the new year. Between now and then, or shortly after that, what can prospective shareholders look forward to, Michael? What are you looking forward to from a news flow standpoint? Well,
it's something a little different than, because I look at these announcements of mineral resources or PEA. I look at that as kind of a snapshot in time. It's not definitive. It's not the final number. It's always going to likely improve in this district. So I do get excited about those, but I think what really starts to excite me is our plan to start to develop underground at both Copala and Panuco. And this is something that we've been working on for some time now, to prepare access, to permit it, and these types of things. And I believe that in 2024 we should have the opportunity to start test mining. Okay. I think that's important.
I want you to walk my audience through the concept of test mining. What exactly are you doing on the ground?
So really the objective of why would we bother to develop an underground mine before we have the milling infrastructure is because we want to, get to the actual vein. We want to see the mineralization with our own eyes, not just through the drill core. We want to understand the ground conditions. We want to understand how competent is this rock. How does it reconcile to our resource drilling that we've done? Basically, it's giving us higher levels of assurance that those first few years of mine life are actually going to be what we project and what we expect due to our drilling. Now, there's been a few, I guess why it matters to investors is probably the real question, is it gives us a lot more certainty, and it also lets us know what we're dealing with here, lowers the risk of failure in the future. Some companies have had issues with that in Mexico with underground mining. I don't have to name the specific ones, but recently there's been some higher profile issues with underground mining in Mexico. We have two ways to combat that. One is something that we can't change, and that is the fact that we have 10-meter thick veins, which is incredibly thick, which is good. Typically in Mexico, you're mining an underground vein that's maybe 1.5 meters or 2 meters thick if you're lucky, and that would be considered wide. We have something that's 5 times that thickness, which is Copala, and it runs for 1 mile straight, and it's high grade, very high grade. So having a high grade, very thick structure like Copala offsets a lot of the risk for investors in this sense. But us going underground before producing and running material through our mill, test mining, gives us even higher levels of assurance that, what we've drilled is there. The grade is reconciled to what we think it is. But really what I get excited about is, the fact that many of these veins, like the Molino vein that we made, was a blind discovery.
The Molino vein is this new vein you found in the condemnation drilling recently.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. It was a surprise. Condemnation drilling found this high-grade vein. and we had no idea it was there. So we're starting about a few hundred meters out from Copala and Napoleon. Actually, we're going kind of two different separate entrances, and one is going east, the other is going west into the structure. In between that adit and the vein that we're working towards, I'm excited to see what we might find. We might find another Copala that's stacked on top of underneath the existing Copala. We might find another Napoleon that's sitting there running parallel to Napoleon. So at San Dimas, they actually did just tunnel across from one end to the other end of the property, and they made every discovery that they needed to doing that. So getting underground is a huge step forward for a company like ours, and the potential to not only de-risk but to make new discoveries is huge.
Yeah, and so that is your vision, right? And you said it here. You're not necessarily looking to take this company to market. I mean, I'm sure you'll entertain any conversation, but frankly, as a shareholder, I'm looking at this market right now, and I'm like, I bet you the majors have a huge appetite for takeovers right now. And I haven't seen a ton, but I have seen some very strategic investments in companies just because the valuations are great, right? For a major to maybe increase their position in an explorer. As a shareholder of a company like Vizsla, I'm like, don't hit the bid now. There's so much upside I want to capture, right? That's how I feel about it. And there may be a day when that makes sense. I don't think today's that day. It's like, let's stay at work, right? Let's continue to increase the resource estimate, et cetera. Build out the mine test. And so from your perspective now, it's let's work towards the increased resource estimate in the new year. Let's complete the mine test plan, gain that assurance that we know exactly what we're dealing with here, and we'll de-risk that process for when we get there. You'll make the call, I suppose, if and when you're there, right? And then it's continue to explore the optionality surrounding your core project right now. Yeah,
that's absolutely right. And just to speak to that potential of takeover, and again, this is where the shareholder alignment comes in, as a special.
100%.
It matters because, we do know that there are, 3 or 4 specific milestones in the next, call it 6 to 12 months that will add shareholder value. They should add shareholder value. The mineral resource estimate, test mining, some other announcements, and then the PEA. And, trying to sell the company before that, I think, is a disservice to shareholders. But, we do have, really a strong team, and we do have the aspirations to build a large producer out of Vizsla, and I know that we have the capabilities to do it. A lot of the confidence that we have around that certainly comes from Simon Smirlik, who is on our board. Simon is the COO of Ausenco Engineering. So they built Las Chispas in Sonora. They build all these mega mines down there in South America, for companies like Codelco and others, Teck. Simon's probably built more mines than most people have ever visited. And his guidance, his oversight in the things that we do is very important. And he's not a hands-off director. He's more involved than you would think. And we have a huge amount of experience on our board, but our core team too, our Marty Dupuy, COO, came from Pan American. A lot of our guys came from Agnico and Capstone, direct experience in Mexico. So, sometimes people say, oh yeah, I know we're going to build the mine, and you can see that they don't have, on their team, they don't have the people capable of doing it. That's where we're different as well.
What's your cash position at present?
We have about 35 million Canadian in the bank.
Okay. Any need to look to the market for capital over the next year, do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, it's important for a company like Vizsla to always have, significant cash balance in the bank. And because of that, we do explore various ways where we can finance the company while minimizing dilution. So part of my job, a large part of my job, is to make sure that we're exploring those options. But we don't have immediate plans to finance right now.
Yeah, nor do you need to right now with 35 mil in the bank.
That's right.
Anything else you want to leave my audience with today, Michael?
Well, I think, Vizsla is such an exciting company because, we're doing something that very few companies out there have done or, can do, which is we've taken, almost a virgin to exploration district with a long history of small scale production, but really an underexplored district. We consolidated it for the first time, And now the growth, the rate of growth that we see with our resources as we continue to drill, I think shows that we have something very, very special. Again, there's 15 billion ounce districts in the world. 9 of them are in Mexico. I think that will be that next billion ounce district. And again, that's at a time where silver becomes so important for the world. If we want to achieve, you know, these 2030 and 2050 goals for decarbonization and electrification, silver is imperative for that.
Yeah. Look, I'm a happy shareholder. I think Vizsla is a great place for new investors to look if they're looking at this stage of company in the precious metals business. You've done a great job of surrounding yourself with great people, and from my perspective, proven you're a very responsible steward of capital, which is like the most important thing. And I love that you eat your own cooking, as does your business partner. It's the number one, it's the most, is it not, it's the number one thing.
Yeah.
Why should I invest if you haven't, 10x my investment yourself, right? I want to know you're way more worried than I am, way more excited than I am. You're on the emotional roller coaster with me, except 10x that every single day. So I want to thank you for coming on and chatting with me today.
Thank you very much, Jay. Good
All
to
right,
see you.
man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
This is Jay Martin.